Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello students, this is the second lecture on non-finite, finite and non-finite clauses. In this lecture we're going to reveal the structural ambiguities or deficiencies of the non-finite clauses. If you remember, in the previous lecture we talked about the non-finite clause as a mini clause of a main one or a matrix clause, which means that the non-finite clause must have a verb and or a subject, okay, which means it should be a complete sentence with full meaning. However, if you remember, I said that due to stylistic purposes, we find such grammatically acceptable or grammatically well-formed constructions. So these grammatically acceptable and grammatically well-formed constructions are on the expense of the meaning and the structure of a given sentence. So shortening any sentence, okay, eliminating any element of the sentence would keep the construction ambiguous, and this ambiguity could have different interpretations, or more than one interpretation, two interpretations at least. So the use of structural deficiencies of non-finite clauses has benefits, though it has the demerits of structural ambiguities, yielding ambiguous sentences, okay, but at the same time it has its own benefits. What kind of benefits? As we have said, it is used in prose, in poetry, in drama, and literature in general, as stylistic devices, okay. If we, as you know, if you keep writing or saying full sentences starting with the capital, ending with the full stop, a sentence has the subject, the verb, the complement, object, adjective, adverbial, whatsoever, you will have a monotone in your writing, a monotonous piece of writing. So what to do? You need to make variable or various structures such as these. How to do them? You have to make certain grammatically acceptable, okay, constructions. When you take it against the context, you will understand it right away, okay. However, as I said, these bring about the structural ambiguities, okay. The structural ambiguities, these sentences, these constructions, the non-finite clauses, as we have mentioned them in the previous lecture, and the five types of the non-finite clauses. If we try to remember them together, they are the ed past, the ed past participle, the ing present participle, the to infinitive, the ber infinitive, okay, the ber infinitive. These are the four non-finite clauses. When verbs when clauses have verbs with these or starting with them, okay, then these are called non-finite verbs, and the non-finite verbs existing in constructions without finite verbs, then these constructions are called non-finite constructions, and precisely these are called non-finite clauses. These non-finite clauses, okay, bring about the structural ambiguities. Yes, they are used in literature in general as stylistic devices. However, they bring about structural ambiguities, or they turn the constructions ambiguous. If we take this example, we met you, okay, leaving the room. We met you leaving the room. Now, we met you is the main clause. We met you is the main clause. We, subject, met, verb, and you, object. Okay, leaving the room. Leaving the room is the non-finite clause. Why? Because it has the non-finite verb, which is leaving, which is the present participle, or with ing. Leaving the room. This is called non-finite clause. And here the non-finite clause is ambiguous. Why? Because we cannot designate the subject. Sometimes we can designate the verb because of the form of the verb, which has the non-finite addition, but often we cannot easily specify the subject. Now, what kind of subject? Here we have we and you. Okay. Now, if we say we met you when we are leaving the room, when we were leaving the room. Okay. We met you when we were leaving the room. Now, the subject of the non-finite clause is we. Good. But what about if we say we met you when you were leaving? Both are correct. So here, since we have two interpretations to one sentence, okay, then the sentence is called structurally ambiguous. Why? Because the ambiguity stems from the structure. Now, if we take the second example, so what is the subject? We or you. Now, so the whole issue depends on the context. The whole issue depends on the context. Only the context can solve this problem of ambiguity. If we deal with the context, now if we know the context, who was leaving, whether the subject we or the object you, then we can easily figure out the subject of the non-finite clause. But imagine that we do not have, or we do not know the context. We are not aware of the context of the situation where this sentence is written or spoken. What to do? We only have the written sentence. What to do? We will be in an ambiguous situation. So, when no subject is inferred from the context, the subject will be either indefinite, somebody, something, or I, somebody, something, or I. This is when we cannot infer the subject from the context. For example, to be a teacher is the worst thing in Iraq, and this is a real example, realistic one. To be a teacher, this is the non-finite clause, okay, which is regarded as a subject of the main clause, is the worst thing in Iraq. Now, for a person to be, and this is the subject, which is indefinite, for a person to be a teacher, which is indefinite. So here the subject is the indefinite somebody or something, or I sometimes. Okay, to be a teacher, for example, I to be I to or for me to be a teacher, for I to be a teacher, for a person, for somebody, okay, to be a teacher, and so on and so forth. The second example, for example, you're mistaken to be honest, which means if I am to be honest, you are mistaken, or if you are to be honest, if I am to be honest, I mean if you are to be honest, and if somebody or if someone to be honest. Okay, this is the way how non-finite clause brings about the structural ambiguity. Now we cannot know who what the subject is, whether a person, somebody, definite, indefinite, I, you, we, were, they, and so on and so forth. Something which is inanimate, we cannot exactly know the subject. Yes. Now here a note to be taken into account. Negation, I mean the negation of the non-finite clause, is not like the negation of the non-finite clause, okay, is not like the negation of the finite clause. How? In what way? Okay, of course, since there is no verb in the non-finite clause, okay, then the negation must be different, and we mentioned that this is one of the differences between finite and non-finite clauses. Okay? So by when negating the non-finite clause, we add the article, the particle not before the non-finite verb, okay, or before the preposition for, and after the preposition to, if there is a preposition to found. So this is the way we add not before the non-finite verb, before the preposition for, and after the preposition to. So before the verb, the non-finite verb, and the preposition for, and after, when we have the preposition to, we put it after the preposition to, in order to negate this clause, non-finite clause. Let's take this example and try to analyze it accordingly. It is his fault for not doing anything about it. So the non-finite clause here, okay, doing anything about it, doing anything about it, okay, doing anything about it. So it is his fault for not doing, as I said, before the verb, before the verb and the preposition, yes, before the verb and after the preposition, which is for. The verb is doing, okay, and the preposition is for. So it is after the preposition for and before the preposition to. Here is the particle not. This is the. If there is no for, then we only put not, and that's it. Not before the verb in either way. Okay. So it is his fault. Now this is the main sentence, the main clause, I should say, the main clause. This is it is his fault, the main clause. Okay. And the non-finite clause is for doing anything about it. Now, trying to negate this is by adding the not before the verb and after the preposition, whether for or after the preposition for and after the preposition to, if found. Okay, I think here we need the word after. Okay, yes, after preposition for, and for and after to, if to is found. Now this is the example, which is where we put not here, not. Let's capitalize it for emphasis. Okay. Please do not write it in capital. If I bring it in the exam, do not write it in capital. Okay, here I just wrote it here for the emphasis, for the sake of emphasis, to emphasize this. Now, the second example is the wisest policy. The wisest policy is for us not to interfere, not to interfere. Again, for us not to interfere. Now here, to is not a preposition. Keep in mind, here this to is not a. This to is called to infinitive, which is used to the infinitive. Now, and since it is the non-finite clause, okay, so we put the not before it, but you have to recognize the to here is not a preposition. If it is a preposition, then the not comes where? Comes after it. The not comes after it. For example, we can say, it is good to me, okay, going there. Now let's write it here. It is good, okay, to me, okay, going there. Now here, going there is the non-finite clause with present participle, ing, present participle. Now here, to is not an infinitive, it is a preposition. Now when we try to negate this, it will be it is good to, it is good to me, okay, it is good to me, okay, sorry, it is good to not me, it is good to not me going there. It could be it so in the context, it is good to not me. It could be to Ahmed, to Ali, to anybody else, but not me. It is good to not me, okay, to going there. So here, to is a preposition, which is not infinitive. Now you don't need this, of course. Yes. Now verbless clauses. Now the reduction, the verb clause can be defined as a reduction of the verb be and the subject, which could be inferred again from where? From the context. So the context is highly, significantly important. Okay? The context is everything. Whenever you use language, okay, there must be a context. Without context, we cannot interpret, we cannot convey meaning. So, when we try to reduce a sentence or a clause into a short one, like the verbless clauses or the non-finite clauses, the subject and the verb are deleted, but they can be inferred from the context, whatever context. It could be the linguistic or the situational context. Here in this case, verbless clauses, which apparently, okay, or explicitly, they do not have verbs or subjects, or sometimes subjects and verbs, but implicitly, okay, ضمنا, there are the subject and the verb. Okay, there are the subject and the verb. If we try to interpret the sentence, then we must mention the verb, the subject, and the verb, so that the clause is disambiguated. Now let's take this example. When ripe, fruits are delicious. So the verbless clause is when ripe. Now this clause has no verb, no subject, then it is no clause. But how come we call it a clause or verbless clause? Why? Because it is easy, because it is explicitly a verbless clause, but implicitly a verb clause or finite clause, which has a verb and a subject. A verb and a subject. Now, the verb and the subject is taken from the context, the linguistic context, which is fruits, because the predicate is about the fruit, which is delicious. Then when ripe is which is, or what is the ripe subject? It is the fruit. So we can say the fruits, and since it is an adjective, so it needs a copular verb, which is either the linking verb such as become, okay, or the linking or the copular verb is. And since the fruits is a plural noun, then we should put are. So it could be disambiguated as when the fruits are ripe, they are delicious. Okay, that's why we use when ripe, fruits are delicious for certain again stylistic variations. Okay, for certain stylistic variations. Example number 2. Too nervous to reply, he started at the floor. Okay, too nervous to reply. This is the verbless clause, okay, which has no subject, no verb. What to do? Okay, what to do? We have to bring the subject and the verb. Okay, we can say when he started too nervous to reply. Okay, he started at the floor, or when he is since the tense is in the past. So when he was too nervous to reply, he started at the floor. Okay, being too nervous. So the issue here, we can write it down here. When he was too nervous to reply, okay, he started, etc. Okay, he started the at the floor. Okay, so this is here, this is the verbless clause, which is in fact a verb clause or finite clause, because it does have the subject, okay, and the verb. It does have the subject and the verb. Okay, I keep deleting these additional examples so that you fully understand the topic. The verbless clause above is a reduction of a finite clause, as I said. A reduction, okay, of a finite clause, while the second is a reduction of a finite clause. Okay, the second a reduction of, so both of them are reduction of finite or non-finite clauses. However, both of them should have verbs and or objects. Moreover, there is non-finite clause within the verbless clause itself. Within the verbless clause itself. Now, if we take this example, the last one, okay, to reply, too nervous to reply. Now, this is a non-finite clause where within, okay, the verbless clause. Non-finite clause here, to reply, okay, infinitive, to infinitive, within the main verbless clause. Now, this is a good note to be taken into account. Keep in mind that it could the verbless clause could have non-finite clause within it. However, whatsoever verbless clause and a non-finite clause, both of them have implicitly revealed the finite the verb and or the subject, or both of them, the verb and the subject all together. Okay, the verb and the subject all together. Yes, that's all for the topic of this lecture. That's all. So a quick recap. In this lecture, we talked about the structural deficiencies of non-finite clauses, and we talked also about the verbless clauses. We said that shortening any clause can bring about structural ambiguities. We can only reach the precise interpretation of such structural ambiguous constructions through the context of the linguistic context and the context of situation. Okay, we also talked about the verbless clauses. Again, we said that the verbless clauses must have a verb and a subject, and these verb and subject are the implicit ones. We can detect them from the context, from the linguistic context within the sentence, or from the situational context of the situation where the sentence is used or the sentence is spoken. That's all for this lecture. It is important as it has different explanations different structural ambiguities, different interpretations of one clause. Keep focusing on such a lecture. That's all for me. If you have any question, any query, as I always say, contact me online. That's all. Thank you very much.